Okay, so an interesting article recently dropped from Bloomberg about Nintendo's production over the next number of months because of the sales performance that they had over the holiday season, specifically in the US. Bloomberg wrote this with Takahashi Mochizuki stating that Nintendo cuts Switch 2 output by over 30% on weak US sales. Now, here is the roundup of the information. Then I'll go over some things that kind of don't really make too much sense to me based off of what I've read here, and also based off of a number of things that has happened in the past with Takahashi Mochizuki's reporting and the stuff that just ultimately ended up not being correct. But people are taking this and kind of saying it's 100%, which I don't necessarily think that it is. But let's get into it here. So Nintendo Co. is cutting back the production of Switch 2 after demand for the console trailed the company's expectations during the year-end holiday season, particularly in the US. The company plans to make 4 million units of its flagship device this quarter, a third less than the 6 million it had originally planned to produce, with the reduced output rate set to continue in April. Nintendo's shares did fall 6.3% in Tokyo after the news, erasing some of the gains that they did get from Pokemon Pocopia. Now, also in this article, they talk about a number of different things, stating that it was a bit weaker in the US, and they also talked about Metroid Prime 4 not hitting 1 million units, but Nintendo did confirm that the game actually did sell 1 million units, and they didn't state that it was the most up-to-date sales. Nintendo only had tracking for the end of December, so you have to assume that it was as of the end of December, because Nintendo did not give us up-to-date February sales number when that article did come out with Nintendo's financials. They sold 1 million units. That was incorrect in the article as well, but I want to talk about a number of different things here, because while this could be correct when it comes to production and what Nintendo's doing, it doesn't really fit well with maybe what I'm saying in my brain, and maybe you guys can help me out here. But if they plan on doing 6 million units instead of the 4 million up until the end of the financial year, which is the end of March coming up here, then that would be that they would have produced and put out 23 million units, which would be 3 million units plus, actually no, 4 million units plus over what they were looking to do at 19 million for the financial year. So to me, that just doesn't really quite make sense, because they didn't revise their forecast again. It was at 15 million, then they put it to 19 million, then they held strong at 19 million, even though they've already sold 17.3 million at this point. So they don't really need too much more to hit their sales target of the 19 million units by the end of this March. And they've probably already got it, obviously, with the success of Pokemon Pocopia. So that's what really doesn't make sense to me. Was Nintendo really going to put out 23 million systems when it comes to shipping out and having those on the books? I don't really know about that. But once again, we will see where Nintendo's sales numbers are at in May. It's going to be the financial year ending by March, but we'll find out those numbers in May. And I think that that's really where I kind of take away from all this, is that we have to wait for Nintendo's actual numbers and Nintendo's sales estimates and what they have to say. There have been some other reporters pushing back on this. Tai Kim also stated this on Twitter about the article: another ridiculous negative Bloomberg story on Nintendo after the company published sell-through console sales data in early February for the December holiday, reaffirmed FY guidance, and now consoles are selling out around the world after Pocopia. The author has been flat out wrong several times and has been writing conflated negative Nintendo takes for years. There's also been a number of Sony takes that have been wrong when it comes down to it. So I wanted to research a bit more about what's going on there. Why was he saying that? Because somebody linked that to me, and I kind of fell into really a wormhole of incorrect information from Takahashi Mochizuki, which I've actually reported on myself years ago, which was interesting because I forgot about this, but I actually reported on twice. About 2 times Nintendo actually had to come out and state that no, Takahashi Mochizuki's report on this is wrong, and ultimately it ended up being wrong on the things here. So the first one that I want to talk about is where people linked to me that the report from last year, where Mochizuki stated that Nintendo would be offering some wholesale prices in Japan for retailers at like the actual stock on the retail, not the price of the system, but the stock on the retail, so they can earn more money off of each Nintendo Switch 2 sold. So Nintendo came out and flat out denied that report. This was on June 1st, 2025, and Nintendo said a news report related to the wholesale price of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the Japanese market was published. We want to clarify that this report is not true. Nintendo does not disclose any information regarding business conditions and distribution with retail with anybody else outside of that. So that's pretty much what they said there. They denied that one, so that's just one report. Okay, fine. He got that one wrong, maybe that's not correct. But then if you go back a couple of years or a few years back to 2021, they also denied a report from Mochizuki that the Nintendo Switch 1 was getting a 4K variant. Mochizuki wrote an article stating that multiple developers have this 4K Nintendo Switch 1 and that they're going to be putting out games and all that. Nintendo just flat out said, that's not correct. We just have the Nintendo Switch OLED, and that's what's coming out. That was back on September 30th, 2021. The OLED came out in October, so it was just about a week or so. I think it launched with Metroid Dread. So Nintendo came out and said, yeah, there's no 4K Nintendo Switch 1 or anything like that. Now, another issue that I saw too was that somebody pointed out that he was wrong with production numbers when it comes to the PlayStation 5 back in 2020. Mochizuki said this when it comes to it: Sony Corporation has reduced its manufacturing plans for the PlayStation 5 by 4 million units due to complications making a key component. The update from the article here says Sony has reached out to GameIndustry.biz with the following statement denying the Bloomberg report. While we do not release details related to manufacturing, the information provided by Bloomberg is false, the statement reads. I mean, maybe they're lying, maybe they're not, but there's multiple people stating here that this production stuff and what they're saying is not correct. Another thing that's kind of like not lining up as much is that Nintendo also had sales for the Switch 2 that are 45% above the Nintendo Switch 1 in the same time frame. So it just seems weird that Nintendo would expect so much more based off of their financial year result that they already talked about, how they didn't revise things and how it's nearly 50% above the output that they did with the Nintendo Switch 1. I do think that it's one of those things like with this article, sure, you can believe it if you want to. There are a lot of people that are believing it because it's Bloomberg and Bloomberg has a big name, but I do caution to actually wait for Nintendo to talk about the sales numbers themselves, because we did get a number of people making videos and articles and stating that there was all sorts of sales problems, and ultimately ended up selling 17 million units plus for that first 7 months on the market, a little bit underneath that, which is once again a record when it comes to console sales. And I do think that it's doing better now at this point. Not saying that there wasn't a little bit underperforming when it comes to the West, because that is true. Nintendo did state that it was somewhat under their expectations for the holiday for Western sales, but Japanese sales were over their expectations, so it kind of balanced out a bit. So we'll see what happens here when it comes to the production and all of that, because obviously they'd have to produce just as much or if not more because of Pocopia and how that game is doing. So we'll see what happens when Nintendo actually reports the sales numbers on, I think it's going to be like early May or so, like the first week of May. We should get their sales reports and it's going to give us the full breakdown. Right now, it's just hard for me to look at what the history is of Takahashi Mochizuki and kind of just how he's been wrong on a lot of the production and reporting when it comes to certain things where companies have actually came out and stated that's not correct. And once again, I had a whole bunch of people, I just reported this normal at first, but I had a whole bunch of people reach out to me and say, OJ, this guy's gotten so much stuff wrong. And I went back and looked at some of my videos and I covered it, and yeah, he got that stuff wrong too. So I don't know, it's one of those things that we're gonna have to wait and see and look. I think the system's actually selling pretty good, and I think ultimately it's going to end up selling really good, especially once we get some more details on when the next Zelda, Mario, and of course Fire Emblem and all these different games that are going to be coming out. Pokemon's going to be coming out next year. Pocopia is doing its thing now. So I'm not really too worried about the sales numbers or anything like that. I think it's selling good. And I think that if you're looking at new systems coming out, like the PlayStation 6 or the next Xbox Series, man, I'm really interested to see if people think that coming out with $600 or $700 or $1,000 systems is going to get them better sales than what Nintendo has right now, because that's going to be very interesting to see that, especially with the PlayStation 5 still being on the market and still being relevant. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of people changing their tune on what is good and bad sales based off of what we see from some of these other systems that are coming out. Kind of like how we got a shift of sales when Steam Deck came out, and all of a sudden it went from it doesn't have to sell as good as other platforms to it's selling good for what Valve wants. So I'm guessing that there's going to be a similar type of switch here, but once again, we'll have to wait and see. So what do you guys think about this article here with Bloomberg and the production? Do you guys believe it? Do you not believe it? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click the notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.